Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Supatease here. I thought it would be interesting to make a series of videos showing you guys the PvP specific changes that Blizzard is going to be making to World of Warcraft. I'm going to have a link to this page as well in the description down below if you want to take a look yourself, but it seems like it would be good to look at them and talk about the PvP specific changes that have happened and maybe are potentially going to happen. So these recent PvP changes, confirmed by Halinka, were live since the start of the arena season on September 20th. So let's just take a look at some of them. Apparently there was a bug with elite PvP gear being awarded to players that weren't at the certain rating requirements, so good bug fix there. The primary stat on all templates has been decreased by 10%. So that change specifically tells me that they are looking to reduce damage overall. I don't think that's necessarily the worst thing in the world. The damage could do with a little bit of a haircut. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. I'm also very aware that reducing damage overall can make the game feel cooldown dependent. That's something that I'm worried about and will be looking for specifically moving on into the future. The next change for PvP specifically is that Discipline Priest will deal 15% less damage in PvP, and all other healing specs will deal 25% less damage in PvP. I'm wondering if this is really trying to address Holy Paladin specifically. Holy Paladin damage output with the Avenging Crusader PvP talent is pretty crazy high, so I'm actually not against reducing the healer damage overall if that's what it's trying to address. I didn't really feel like Resto Shaman or Resto Druid damage was necessarily too high, but I do think that this nerf for Holy Paladin is acceptable, and they know that Discipline Priests rely on doing damage to heal, so they made the nerf for Discipline Priests not as hard. So I think that's an acceptable nerf. They also buffed pets where they will only take 25 or 75% reduced damage from AoE up from 50%, so trying to make pets a little more tanky to AoE effects, as AoE effects are so prevalent right now. I think that's a good change. The next PvP change is that tanks will take 25% more damage. I think this is a good change. Tanks in World PvP specifically, however, I'm not sure if this will apply in World PvP. I'm hoping that it does apply in World PvP. I'm assuming it does because this is from other players because tanks are so prevalent in World PvP, so I think that's a good change. Players who race in or around the Watchtower assaults during the lay race quest are no longer flagged for PvP. Okay, that's kind of irrelevant for us specifically. Players who backfill into an Ashran that is closing down because there are not enough players will not receive the recurrent debuff once Ashran closes. I'm sure that solves a problem for people playing Ashran. Chilled conjured water, lay enriched water, pail of warm milk. So this is all just water. Okay, before this change you weren't actually able to drink in Arena, so they've addressed that and they've created some water sources that you can buy and actually use to drink and get your mana back, so that's really good. Prestige 4 players will now properly receive the honorable title when reaching on level 50. Okay, so just correcting some rewards for prestige players. Now moving into the meat and potatoes, some of the class balancing and or tuning. So if we look at this, we can see Demon Hunters received an overall agility nerf of 10% in PvP. Now I'm sure we've all experienced how powerful Demon Hunters are overall. I don't disagree with nerfing their agility slightly, but again I will say nerfing overall stats will make classes feel more cooldown dependent. I don't think that most people in the game are complaining that Demon Hunters are doing like very high sustained DPS. I think a lot of the players are more concerned that they're dying in 3 seconds to burst cooldown stacking. So if this 10% agility nerf doesn't address that enough, I would much rather see a cooldown specific nerf than an agility nerf overall. Then Druids Restoration specifically got a 15% intellect buff. Definitely needed. Resto Druids were feeling very weak. I played Resto Druid yesterday and felt competitive. I felt like I could participate. I wasn't holding my team back. This intellect buff is definitely helping Resto Druids out a lot. Hunter Survival Tactics is no longer activated by Play Dead or Wake Up. Honestly, I don't know a lot about Survival Hunter, so I'm not sure if that is relevant or not to them. And now Mistweaver Monks got a 5% intellect buff. It looks like all of the healing specs got a 5% intellect buff, and Resto Druid got a 15, as it was the weakest out of all of them. I think that's okay. I think healers in general especially like the mid-level rating, like the beginning players for healers were really frustrated by the amount of damage and their ability to not heal through it. So I think it's okay for the healers to all get a little bit of a bump. I think 5% is a good number. It's not really high to the point where healers are just unkillable unless they're CC'd. So I think that's a good change overall. And now looking at rogues. Rogues were definitely the complaint of most of the PvP players currently, and Subtlety got a 10% stamina reduction. I think stamina nerfing is honestly the best way to go about reducing the strength of Rogue. I wouldn't mind their high damage if they were also squishy, you know, a glass cannon feel. So I think the 10% nerf to their stamina was good. It will also affect their percent healing scaling, because Subtlety Rogues have a lot of self-healing that's based on their max HP, so that should lower their self-healing as well. So I think the stamina nerf is really good. Now, the 15% agility nerf, you could I'm starting to worry that might be too high. I still think a Subtlety Rogue should be able to do okay damage. Like, obviously, Subtlety is the highest control of all 3 specs, so it should deal, like, theoretically, it should deal less damage than Assassination and Outlaw, just because of its on-demand control and higher mobility. So maybe 15% is acceptable. We'll have to wait and see, but overall, that's the changes for Subtlety. Then Assassination received a 30% agility nerf. That's a very big number. 30% is a very big number, and this is something that I don't think is properly addressing the issues with Assassination. I think a lot of players dislike Assassination when they're fighting against it because you feel like you can't heal through Vendetta. You literally, Vendetta goes up, you start seeing those green daggers, they make the sing noise, and you're just like, I'm dead, and you can't do anything to survive. That's the main issue I think a large majority of players have with Assassination overall in PvP. And a 30% agility nerf, while it does nerf that, I think it more hurts Assassination outside of Vendetta, which I don't think anybody was really complaining about. Assassination damage outside of Vendetta is acceptably low if they're going to be based around Vendetta. So a 30% agility nerf might be excessive. We'll have to wait and see. And then when we look at Outlaw Rogue received an agility nerf by 10%. Similar with Assassination, I feel like Outlaw Rogue is a cooldown dependent class with the PvP talent Plunder and their Adrenaline Rush, and obviously Roll the Bones isn't a cooldown really, but either way, stacking cooldowns on Outlaw is one of the main contributing issues I think a lot of players have with it in PvP, where the damage just suddenly feels unhealable during their burst windows. I would have much rather seen a nerf to their cooldown reduction for Outlaw Rogue than their agility, because again, Outlaw Rogue without their cooldowns, it feels like a wet noodle. You're just Saber Slash, not really doing very much. So again, I don't really feel the nerfs to, while I'm happy that Assassination and Outlaw and Subtlety received nerfs as they were outperforming, I don't know if this kind of nerfing is the right direction, and that's just my general feedback. Now, what I would have also liked to see on this list would be Warriors. I think that Warriors are too potent right now, specifically Colossus Smash. And again, this is kind of what Arms Warriors depend on. When Colossus smashes up, you feel like a freight train is hitting your face against a warrior, and then when Colossus Smash isn't up, you're kind of just like, okay, this is chill, nothing's really going on. So specifically for Arms Warriors, I don't want to see a 10% strength reduction or something like that. I would much rather see the PvP talent Echo Slam reduced in effectiveness, and nerfs targeted towards Colossus Smash. And then also, Enhancement Shamans are doing an insane amount of burst. Now, this specifically, I think, could be addressed with a 10% agility nerf or something along those lines, as they do good sustained damage outside of their ascendants as well. So in that case, I feel like a 10% agility nerf for enhancement would be an acceptable nerf overall, and I would like to see those on maybe an upcoming patch change, as I'm sure after these rogue nerfs that Warriors and Enhancement Shamans will rise in popularity, as they were just as competitive. So I'm interested to see if they can address those issues with warriors and enhancement shamans in a future patch or something like that. But overall, these are the recent PvP specific changes since Tuesday, and like I said, I will put a link in the description below, because I believe that they constantly update this page, so you might want to keep this page on a favorite list and check it in the morning if you're bored and see, oh, did they buff Elemental Shaman? And then just like look through that. You can do that if you want. Overall, I hope you enjoyed my commentary for the recent PvP changes, and I hope you're enjoying Legion, and I'm really hoping that these changes specifically will make the game more enjoyable. So thank you for watching. Tune in next time. Supatease out.